What do Star Wars, the Avengers, and modern weddings have in common? Sometimes, just sometimes, one epic event just isn't enough. While many a Hollywood blockbuster movie is milked dry sequel after sequel, they rake in millions but largely leave their fans less than enamoured with the entire franchise. Star Wars accepted, of course. Have you seen Andor? Incredible. Anyway, I digress. On the other hand, wedding sequels have steadily grown in popularity over the last few years for some very different reasons. In today's world where we're connected globally, there's the blending of traditions, and thank God, expectations are evolving. More couples are discovering that a single celebration might not capture everything they want or everyone they love. But what does it really mean to have more than one wedding event? And how do you pull it off without feeling like you're starring in your very own Hollywood blockbuster, complete with the blowout budget and on-set drama? Today I'm sharing the background, some real life stories, and the reasoning behind this growing trend of sequel weddings. It's really hard to say. Sequel weddings, sequel weddings. Say it 3 times real fast. You'll hear about how modern day logistics and how we're choosing to live, study, and travel, and even personal and practical drivers have made sequel weddings a necessary and brilliant option for some couples. So, whether you're struggling to work out how to plan your wedding because you have too many competing priorities, or you just try to understand why your best friend is sending out save the dates for 2 different weddings, this conversation is for you. Let's get stuck into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille, and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. So what are sequel weddings? A sequel wedding is when a couple chooses to have 2 or more separate wedding events. The most common type is to have a smaller, intimate legal ceremony, so like a micro wedding or even an elopement, followed by the larger celebration or reception at a later date. And this really came to the fore over COVID when some couples just wanted to get married but couldn't have the guests due to restrictions. Do you remember those bad times we've tried to put to the back of our minds? But then they followed it up, sometimes years later, with a big party or reception. These separate events can be days, weeks, or as I said, even years apart, and are often held in different locations as well to accommodate the different groups of family and friends. However, sequel weddings are different from religious or cultural multi-day weddings because there's several religious and cultural traditions, and they have always included multi-day wedding celebrations as a standard part of their marriage rituals. These events are not a response to modern logistical or personal needs, but rather a continuation of very long-standing customs. So, for example, in Hindu or Jewish, some Muslim wedding traditions, the marriage is celebrated over several days with a series of ceremonies and rituals, each one symbolizing different things for a different purpose, and they have specific meanings. And all of these events are usually considered part of a single unified wedding experience, and so they're planned like that from the very outset. So the key differences between a sequel wedding and a religious or cultural multi-day wedding are that sequel weddings are usually about a personal choice, logistics, and inclusivity. The location and dates of the 2 celebrations are sometimes widely spaced apart, and the guest list is frequently different for the 2 events. Whereas your religious, cultural, multi-day weddings are more about tradition and rituals and the religious or cultural practices. These events are more commonly set on consecutive days and are often in the same place or at least in the same city, and the guest list is usually the same for all of the events unless there is like a gender divide, all the women go to one particular one, all the men go to another one, or there's an age restriction involved, just no kiddies to certain parts of the custom. So, why are more couples choosing these sequel weddings? Because I guess looking at it from the outside, it must seem like bloody hell. Why is there another thing? The idea behind it really is simplification, believe it or not. First up, there was the driver of COVID, of course, and this is really where we got the first taste of having different celebrations for different reasons. But on top of that, this has been coming for a while. I feel like the COVID era, if you like, sort of accelerated this trend at the moment. And one of the biggest factors that has influenced having these different celebrations is that number one, couples are marrying later in life. They're older. So couples today are choosing to marry later than previous generations because they're taking their time, their 20s usually, building successful careers. They're traveling. They're living independently. They don't expressly need to get married in their early 20s like it's been expected and required, really, in the past. And the 2025 Australian Wedding Industry Report surveyed more than 4,200 engaged and recently married couples and discovered that the average age of a bride, so this is for heterosexual couples, the bride on their wedding day is now 32, and the average age of a groom on their wedding day is 33. And they also did a survey on same-sex unions. So for the females, the age is 35, and for the males in same-sex unions, it's 36. This might or might not sound like quite old to you, but it's worth noting that in 2016, the average heterosexual couple was a 28-year-old bride and a 29-year-old groom. So there has been this upward trend in ages of couples getting married for the first time. And as far as easy weddings go, they've attributed that to COVID postponements throughout 2020, 2022, and cost of living pressures, which means that couples are generally, on average, having a longer engagement. And in Australia here, per the Easy Weddings report, it's gone up from the 22-month engagement, which was the average last year, to a 24-month, 2-year engagement. And so this means that more than ever before, couples are bringing a wealth of experiences and a wider, more diverse social network to their wedding planning, which is important, and I'll explain it. So these expanding social networks, right? Just the people that you know, how far-flung they are around the world and how deep your relationship is with them. So it comes about because couples are spending more time working, studying, and traveling, and their friendships and professional relationships are now often spanning cities, countries, and even continents away from home base. So for many couples, their guest list is truly global, which makes it difficult to gather everyone in the same place at the one time for an all-in wedding celebration. And this is the reality for one couple that I've chatted with recently. So she's Australian and he's English, and they're living and working in the UK currently. As I understand it, the groom's family, it's less than 10 people, and her immediate family is closer to 40 people. But of course, his are based in England and hers are based in Australia. So when you think about the cost of international travel for his family, when you think about the time they'd have to take off to be able to come over to Australia, this is all impacted on their choice to have a legal micro wedding here in Australia on a Thursday afternoon on the bride's parents' property, and then to host a reception party with extended family and friends on the Saturday night at a different location, with another mini celebration just for his family back in England afterwards, after they're married legally. It's a scenario where they feel that their circumstances and the needs of their families in different countries will be met this way, and they'll also be as comfortable and relaxed as possible. If you had a sweary, chocolate-addicted, wine-sipping fairy godmother who could help you with your wedding planning, what would you wish for? Perhaps no more waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, wondering what you've forgotten, or fretting about your RSVPs. Maybe no more spreadsheets or post-it notes or endless to-do lists. Well, I can help you with all of that. Websites is an Australian wedding website builder, guest management software, and wedding project planner all in one. Why is this such a game changer for you? Well, imagine everything to do with your wedding being in one place, updated in real time in the cloud, shareable to anyone else that's helping you, password protected for your guests, with notifications to tell you what needs to be done next and by when. It's amazing, right? I love how easy websites is to set up and use, and how there are no ads on the platform yelling at you to spend more money on your wedding. To get started on your very own free wedding website, just head to wedsites.com. That's WEDSITES.com, and enter the code UNBRIDELYPOD, that's UNBRIDELYPOD, to get 10% off their paid planning tools. The link is in the show notes. One of the other factors that have come into play with these sequel weddings are cross-border relationships. So it's more common and accepted than ever for a couple from different countries and cultures to come together through work and education or travel. And here's a quote from the Wedding Wire 2019 Newlywed Report. While individuals place an emphasis on broadening their horizons, they are introduced to new people, cultures, and cities, leading to 58% of couples to marry outside of their background. So this includes race, religion, ethnicity, regional background, and more, which of course is impacting these different celebrations that couples feel like they want to have and they need to have. So each partner may bring their own traditions, family expectations, their community connections, and this can make it really challenging to fit everything into a single wedding event. Another factor are family considerations. So as couples are marrying later in life, which I spoke about before, their parents, don't forget we're all aging, so their parents and sometimes even their grandparents are often at an advanced age. So if, for a heterosexual couple, if a bride and a groom on average are older when they get married, their grandparents and their parents are also older. So many older relatives may not be able to travel long distances. So whether that's to another city, interstate, overseas, hosting a smaller, intimate wedding at home makes sure that everyone can participate and they can share in the couple's happiness, regardless of their mobility or health concerns. Within reason, of course, but it makes it so much easier if they're on home turf. And for one of my recently married couples, they made this work for them with a meaningful and very relaxed Sunday lunch with their elderly and some very young relatives as well, where they got legally married, and then their big wedding was held overseas in a dream location for them that their relatives couldn't easily get to. And so that was the perfect solution for them. Included in all this is just the practicality and inclusivity of having a sequel wedding, because it means that couples can have a meaningful, accessible event for close family and friends, and then celebrate again with a wider circle, perhaps in a different location or with a different emphasis. And this flexibility allows couples to create a wedding experience that truly reflects their unique story, their values, and the people who matter the most to them. So if you have a listen to episode number 47, entitled Steph and Aaron, their sneaky, low-cost, high-end elopement and why you might consider one, you'll hear about how they tackled having a legal elopement and then a quiet lunch with their families afterwards. And I love their approach to doing things their way. It's well worth a listen. And I'll be sure to put the links, of course, to all these resources in the show notes for you so you can follow up after you've had a listen to this one. So if this is starting to appeal to you, if you're going, wait a minute, this could actually be a solution for us, here are some top-level tips for planning a sequel wedding. So I would highly suggest, number one, before diving into the logistics, take a moment to reflect on what you want for each celebration to mean. And this is for the both of you and for everyone that you invite. Because what makes sequel weddings so unique is how thoughtfully they can be tailored to reflect your journey together and the people who mean the most in the world to you. So what do you want each event to feel like, to look like? How long do you want them to go for? Are they formal? Are they more relaxed? Can you picture locations for the both of them? Write it down. Write down all your ideas. And then next, create 2 or more, depending on how many celebrations you're having, of course, but create distinct guest lists. So decide who will attend each event to avoid overlap, unless you want to, of course, but the main purpose is to have 2 celebrations that suit 2 different needs. Generally, it's 2 different groups of people. And you also want to make sure that each celebration feels special in its own right. So who will be at the first celebration and who will be at the second? Are you welcoming a brand new group or inviting those who couldn't make it the first time? That intention behind each guest list makes all the difference to the end result. And then number 3, if you can afford it, hire a planner. Hire a planner for both of them if you possibly can, because wedding planners with experience in multi-event weddings can help you manage the logistics, the vendors, and the budgets across both locations. But if hiring a wedding planner is not in your budget, please start early and get yourself organized. Whether that means separate folders in Google Drive, whether that's with a digital planner like Websites, sorting yourself out, getting yourself organized early will be a game changer for you, especially when it comes down to the separate invitations and the RSVPs. You really want to have a defined line between the 2 of them and know exactly what's coming in for when, so you don't get yourself overwhelmed. The 4th tip is to communicate clearly. I couldn't even say that. I'm having real trouble with speaking today, and it's an issue on a podcast. So communicate clearly and transparently. Use your wedding website, if you've got one, or invitations to explain the purpose of each event and set the expectations for your guests. We're never going to please everyone, but we're going to try and minimize the number of people who get upset and how badly they get upset. It's really best practice at this stage to let everyone know what's going on, because I've got to tell you, the truth always comes out eventually. Number 5, budget carefully. Allocate money for travel, for accommodation, and make sure you prioritize what matters most for each celebration. Spend the money where it means something to you, and save on the rest of it. And number 6, make sure you blend your traditions. So make sure both events reflect your shared identity and backgrounds rather than feeling like it's just separate parties for separate families. Every single person, including your future spouse, deserves to feel welcome and comfortable. So what do you think? Could a sequel wedding work really well for you and your situation? Or does it just sound like double the money and stress? Let me know if you've done anything similar too. I'd love to hear about your experience. So what went right and what would you choose to do differently if you had the chance? And I'll chat with you again next week. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.